Walking into Sarah's kitchen felt like stepping into a warm hug. The smell of roasted chicken mingled with laughter and chatter, creating a cozy atmosphere that immediately put me at ease. I was a bit of a hermit, preferring my books and lesson plans over social gatherings. But Sarah had a way of drawing me out of my shell. "Emily, you made it," Sarah exclaimed, her voice a beacon in the bustling room. She dashed over, enveloping me in a tight hug that squeezed the breath out of me for a second. "I thought you'd bail last minute," I laughed, shaking my head. "Never." Sarah was the kind of friend everyone needed, straightforward with a non-nonsense attitude that was as refreshing as it was intimidating at times. Her husband, Mark, was the quieter counterpart. A gentle giant, with a knack for listening that balanced Sarah's fiery spirit perfectly. As guests mingled, sipping on wine and nibbling on appetizers, I noticed a man I hadn't seen before. He stood out, not just because of his sharp suit that screamed "I mean business," but there was an air about him that caught my attention. He was chatting with Mark, but his gaze wandered, eventually locking with mine. "That's Michael," Sarah whispered, sidling up to me. "Quite the catch, huh?" I raised an eyebrow, and Sarah's grin was mischievous. "Let's just say I might have played matchmaker tonight." Before I could protest, Sarah was dragging me across the room, my heart hammering in my chest. "Michael, this is Emily, the friend I've been telling you about. Emily, meet Michael, the city's most eligible bachelor." Michael extended his hand, his grip firm but gentle. "Pleasure to meet you, Emily." His voice was smooth with a confidence that made my knees wobble a bit. "Likewise," I managed to say, hoping my nervousness wasn't too obvious. Dinner was served, and conversations flowed as freely as the wine. Michael was easy to talk to, sharing stories of his travels and business ventures that sounded like they were from another world compared to my quiet life as a teacher. "So Emily, Sarah tells me you're shaping young minds. That must be rewarding," Michael said, his eyes twinkling with genuine interest. I shrugged, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. "It's more like herding cats, but yeah, it has its moments." Michael laughed, a sound that made my heart flutter. "I can only imagine. It takes a special kind of person to do what you do." The evening flew by in a blur of laughter and shared stories. As the night wound down, Michael offered to walk me to my car. A gesture I found charmingly old-fashioned. Standing beside my car, the cool night air felt electric between us. I had a great time tonight, Emily," Michael said, his smile sending a wave of warmth through me. "Yeah, I'd like that," I replied, the smile on my face feeling permanent. Driving home, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was the start of something new. Little did I know that dinner at Sarah's wasn't just a simple gathering. Waking up to the chirping birds outside our bedroom window, I stretched, still marveling at the reality of my new life. Married to Michael, living in a house that seemed straight out of a magazine. It was a far cry from my cozy, somewhat cluttered apartment back in the city. The smell of coffee wafted up, pulling me out of bed and downstairs where Michael was already up, looking every bit the successful businessman, even in his casual morning attire. "Morning beautiful," he greeted, his smile bright. "Coffee? Yeah, thanks," I mumbled, still rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Taking the mug, I sipped the strong brew, letting it chase away the remnants of sleep. "So, what's on the agenda today?" Michael asked, his tone casual as he glanced over his phone. I shrugged. "Thought I'd unpack some more boxes, maybe explore the neighborhood a bit." Michael nodded, his attention half on me, half on the emails he was scrolling through. "Sounds good. I've got meetings back to back today, won't be home till late." This had become the norm since we moved in. His presence, once constant and comforting during our courtship, had become more like a guest appearance in our home. I brushed off the nagging feeling of loneliness, chalking it up to the adjustment period of marriage. That evening, when Michael finally came home, I decided to approach the subject. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked as he loosened his tie, looking exhausted. "Sure, what's up?" he said, sitting down on the sofa. "It's just, I feel like we're ships passing in the night lately." "I miss us," I admitted, feeling a lump in my throat. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. You know how it is, the business, it's demanding. I'm doing this for us." "I know I do, but maybe we could set aside some time just for us, a date night or something," I suggested, hopeful. He looked at me for a long moment before nodding. "You're right, I'm sorry, Em. Let's do that. How about Friday night, dinner at that Italian place you love?" A smile broke through my worries. "I'd like that." As we settled into a comfortable silence, me curled up with a book, and Michael with his laptop, I couldn't help but feel that this was just a hurdle we'd overcome together. After our quiet moment of reconciliation, the days started to blend into one another. Michael tried to make time for us, scheduling those promised date nights, but his phone was always buzzing, pulling him back into the world of work. I found solace in setting up our home, making it ours, filling it with warmth and love, hoping it would bridge the gap that his absence created. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, a rare moment when his phone was silent, I decided it was the right time to bring up the topic that had been weighing on my heart. "Michael, have you thought about us having kids?" I ventured, my voice shaky with nerves. He looked at me, surprise flickering across his face before it settled into a contemplative frown. "Kids, Em? You know how chaotic things are right now. I barely see you as it is. Bringing a kid into this, we're just not ready." His words stung, a mix of disappointment and frustration. "But we won't ever be ready. There's never a perfect time." I thought aloud. "I mean, we talked about this before." Michael let out a heavy sigh, running his hands through his hair. I know we did, but things are different now. The business is at a critical point, and we're just not in the right place for this, Em." His words felt like a punch to the gut, leaving me winded. It wasn't the response I hoped for, and it hurt more than I expected. "So what? We just keep waiting until when? Until it's too late." "Come on, don't be like that. It's not about putting it off indefinitely, just not right now, okay? Let's get through this patch, and we'll revisit, I promise," he said, his tone gentle but firm. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The conversation had not gone as I hoped, leaving a heavy silence between us as the night drew in. The gap between us felt wider than ever. 2 years flew by, and the change in Michael was like night turning into day, only in reverse. He was always at the office, buried in work, leaving me alone in our big silent house. I found myself diving into my teaching, taking on extra classes, even snagging a part-time job to fill the echoing quiet of my days and nights. When Michael did show up, it was like living with a storm cloud. Parked in front of the TV, a beer in hand, he'd throw out comments about how I looked, how the dinner tasted like cardboard, or how the house wasn't up to his standards. It was nonsense, all of it. I kept our home spotless, cooked meals that would make a chef nod in approval, and as for my looks, I hadn't let myself go. But the way Michael went on, you'd think I'd given up on everything. Deep down, I knew this wasn't about me or how clean the house was. My dad told me there was someone else, that his late nights were more about who he was with than what he was doing. I've seen enough shifty glances in my time, towered enough kids to know when someone's hiding something. One evening I couldn't take the charade any longer. Michael staggered in late, more booze on his breath than words in his hello. I was waiting for him, my mind made up. "We need to talk," I said, cutting right to the chase as he flopped down on the couch. "About?" He didn't even look up, just flicked through the channels on the TV. Us, I gestured between us, the vast distance despite the few feet. I can't do this anymore, Michael. I'm thinking we should get a divorce. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes narrowing. Divorce? Are you out of your mind? Do you know what that would do to my reputation? Your reputation. I couldn't believe my ears. Is that all you care about? What about us? What about how unhappy I am? Michael scoffed, taking a swig from the bottle he brought in with him. You're being dramatic. It's not that bad. Not that bad? I was fuming now. Michael, you're never here, and when you are, all you do is complain and drink. That's not a marriage, I don't even know what that is. He stood up then, his expression hardening. We're not getting a divorce, end of discussion. I won't have people talking, saying I couldn't keep my wife happy. I stared at him, disbelief and anger swirling in my chest. So you're happy to live a lie for appearances? That's enough, Emily. I'm going to bed. We're not talking about this anymore, he said, turning and leaving the room, leaving me standing there, my heart breaking in silence. The last couple of months had been rough. I felt like a shadow of myself, dragging through each day with a heaviness that sunk deeper than just fatigue. Food lost its taste, and my clothes hung loose on my frame. Teaching, something I'd always loved, became a chore. I barely got through. Michael seemed oblivious to it all, more concerned about the dust on the TV stand than the fact I could barely muster the strength to get out of bed. It got to a point where even I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was off, and it wasn't just the blues. Dragging myself to the doctor's office felt like climbing a mountain, but I needed answers. Sitting in that sterile room, when the doctor told me I was pregnant, it was like a jolt of electricity, happy, fear, confusion, it all hit me at once. But through that storm of emotions, one thing stood clear. I wanted this baby, even if it meant going it alone. Telling Michael should have been a moment we shared, but given the state of things, I was dreading his reaction. My fears weren't unfounded. When I finally mustered the courage to tell him, his reaction was like a slap in the face. Pregnant. His voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. You want to bring a kid into this mess? I stood my ground, holding on to the newfound resolve that came with the thought of being a mother. Yes, I do, and I'll raise this child with or without you. Michael laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. Without me? You think you can handle this on your own? You're not exactly young, Emily. His words stung, but I was beyond caring about his opinions. I am fully capable of raising this child. It's clear you don't want any part in this, so maybe it's best if you leave. That set him off. Michael was furious, his words a venomous stream I refused to absorb. He stormed out, and the silence he left behind was a relief compared to his presence. 3 days passed without a word from him. I was alone, truly alone, with a life growing inside me, and a marriage crumbling around me. I couldn't understand how we got here, how the man I married became a stranger, how our plans for a family turned into a battleground. My mind was a jumble of thoughts, worries about the future pressing down on me. That's when I stumbled upon something that turned my already upside-down world completely inside out. Late one evening while scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the loneliness, I noticed a message request on Facebook. It was from someone I didn't know, a woman. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it, my heart sinking as I read her words. The message was brief but clear. She claimed to be in love with Michael, telling me to let him go because he didn't love me anymore. My initial reaction was disbelief, followed by a bitter laugh. Of course, there was someone else. The late nights, the detachment, it all made sense now. but seeing it in black and white was a slap I wasn't prepared for. Fury and hurt swirled inside me, urging me to do something, anything. So I did what any self-respecting scorned woman would do. I went to her profile. There, smiling back at me from the glowing screen, were pictures of Michael and her, cozy and smiling, a stark contrast to the coldness I'd been living with. I felt sick, my hands trembling as I put the phone down. It was one thing to suspect, another to have it confirmed so blatantly. I needed to confront Michael, to hear him admit it. But first, I needed support. Staring at my phone, the message from Michael's mistress still burning bright on the screen, I felt a surge of disgust and betrayal so intense it was like a physical blow. My hand shook with a mix of rage and heartache. Without thinking, I dialed Anna, my sister, needing someone to anchor me in this storm. "Anna," I choked out the moment she answered, my voice a whirlwind of emotions. "He's been cheating. There's someone else, and she had the nerve to message me." Anna's voice came through sharp and clear, laced with anger on my behalf. "Are you okay? What are you going to do?" "I'm done, Anna. I'm filing for a divorce. I can't do this anymore. Not only that, I'll make sure he pays for this compensation for his cheating and alimony for the baby," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, my resolve hardening. Before Anna could reply, a shadow fell over me. Michael had entered the room, his face a mask of fury and shock. Without a word, he snatched the phone from my hands, ending the call. "Filing for divorce, huh? And you think I'm going to just roll over and accept that?" he spat out, his voice laced with disdain. "I don't care what you accept. You've made your bed and now you're going to lie in it," I shot back, my heart pounding in my chest. Michael sneered, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "I'm not marrying her, Emily. It was just an affair. And you think I'll give you a divorce? Pay you? I won't let you drag my name through the mud, and I sure as hell won't be paying for a kid that might not even be mine." He laughed bitterly, his words like daggers. "You don't have a choice. I'll go through the courts if I have to. You think you can live this double life, juggling your wife and your mistress without any consequences? You're wrong," I said, standing my ground, despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. The words Michael spat out about not wanting the baby and his refusal to leave his double life behind hit me hard. I was reeling from his coldness, his outright cynicism. In that moment, my decision was made. I was leaving. But as I turned to grab my things, a sharp pain cut through my stomach, so intense it ripped a scream from my throat. "Michael, call an ambulance," I gasped, doubled over in pain, clutching at my belly. He looked at me, annoyance flickering in his eyes before being replaced by a reluctant sense of responsibility. "I'll drive you," he muttered, clearly irritated by the inconvenience. It was pouring outside, the kind of relentless rain that blurred the world into a watery haze. I struggled to the car, each movement a burst of agony. Michael drove silent and tense as we navigated the slick country roads. Then horror struck. A warm rush of blood, a crimson stain spreading over my clothes and onto the car seat. "Michael," I cried out, terror seizing me. "There's so much blood." His reaction was a mixture of anger and disgust. "Get out," he barked, pulling over with a screech. "You're ruining the upholstery." In disbelief and pain, I somehow managed to get out of the car, expecting, I don't know what, help maybe. But Michael just drove off, leaving me there alone, in pain and bleeding, on the side of the road. I don't know how long I was there before darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, the sterile white of a hospital room greeted me and my sister Anna was there, her face etched with worry and relief. "Emily, thank God," she breathed out, squeezing my hand. "I found you on the road. I was so scared when our call dropped, and I came looking for you." The pain had dulled to a throb, overshadowed by a heavy sense of loss. "The baby," I whispered, fearing the answer. Anna's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Em," she said. "They couldn't save the pregnancy." Grief washed over me, a tidal wave of sorrow for the life that would never be. Amidst the pain, Anna shared that Michael had been in an accident too, found not far from where she'd found me. It seemed fate had a cruel sense of irony. "He's here in the hospital," she said quietly. "It was his fault, the crash." It wasn't long before a police officer entered my room. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes, introducing himself as Officer Daniels. He pulled up a chair, his demeanor gentle yet professional. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand this is a difficult time for you, but I need to ask you some questions about last night," he said. "Your sister informed us of the circumstances leading up to your situation," he started, glancing at Anna before turning his attention back to me. Taking a deep breath, I nodded, signaling him to continue. "Yes, I'll tell you whatever you need to know," I replied. Officer Daniels nodded, taking out a notepad. "Can you tell me about the argument you had with your husband?" he asked. The memories came flooding back, and I recounted the events, my voice steady despite the pain that throbbed in my heart. "We argued about our failing marriage, about his infidelity, and then when I needed him the most, he abandoned me on the side of the road," I said. The officer's brows furrowed as he scribbled down notes. "And he was aware of your condition, that you were pregnant?" he inquired. "Yes, he knew," I replied. "I told him, and he didn't care. He left me there alone," I managed, the bitterness in my voice surprising even me. Officer Daniels' expression softened. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, Mrs. Thompson," he said. "Based on your account and the preliminary investigation, we're looking into charges of neglect and endangerment against your husband. His actions led to serious consequences for you and the loss of your pregnancy." Anna squeezed my hand, her presence a silent support. The thought of Michael facing consequences for his actions was a cold comfort, but it was justice, however small. "What happens now?" I asked, the weight of everything crashing down on me all at once. "We'll proceed with the investigation, and I'll need you to provide a formal statement when you're ready," Officer Daniels assured me, his voice firm as he stood to leave. "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Thompson. We'll be in touch." After he left, the room was silent save for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Anna was the first to break the silence. "He'll get what's coming to him, Em. You're not alone in this." The days that followed were a blur of doctors, police statements, and endless hours of trying to piece together a semblance of normalcy. Michael had been charged, and the news of his actions and subsequent arrest made headlines, tarnishing the reputation he valued above all else. After everything settled, the divorce, the court cases, and Michael's downfall, I started to rebuild my life, brick by brick. The compensation and the justice served felt like cold comfort, but it was closure. The press had a field day with Michael's story, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. He lost his job, his status, and his ability to charm his way through life. As for me, I took it as a sign to start fresh. I found an apartment not too far from the school, a place filled with light and hope, a stark contrast to the shadows of my past. Returning to teaching felt like coming home, the smiles and laughter of my students a balm to my soul. One afternoon, as I was tidying up my classroom, Marie, a fellow teacher and friend, popped her head in. "Hey Emily, you heading out soon?" she asked. "Yeah, just finishing up here," I replied, stacking some papers. She leaned against the door frame, her expression serious. "You know, we're all really glad you're back. The kids missed you. Hell, we all did." I smiled, touched by her words. "Thanks, Marie. It feels good to be back. Feels like I'm finally moving forward, you know? Marie nodded, understanding. You've been through so much, Emily, but you're one of the strongest people I know. You've got this whole new chapter ahead of you now. I chuckled. The idea of a new chapter still feeling a bit surreal. Yeah, a new chapter. Just got to make sure it's a good one, right? Exactly, she agreed with a grin. And hey, who knows? Maybe there's a new love story in there too, when you're ready, of course. The thought had crossed my mind, the possibility of opening my heart again. But I knew if that chapter were ever to be written, I'd approach it with more caution, more wisdom. I'll take my time with that one, I said, my voice steady. But for now, my heart's full enough with these kids and getting my life back on track. Marie nodded, pushing off from the doorframe. Well, just know we've got your back, Emily, through thick and thin. As she left, her words lingered in the air, a reminder of the support system I had around me. My journey hadn't been easy, and the scars would always be a part of me. But as I looked out at the empty classroom, filled with the echoes of laughter and learning, I felt a sense of peace.
My name is Cindy Hansen. I am 35 years old. I have been married to Ethan for 3 years now. My sister Sandra, who is 4 years older than me, lives nearby and visits us often when she has days off. Do you guys not want children? Actually, I found out from a test that I'm not able to get pregnant. I see, I'm sorry. Ethan and I had wanted children from the beginning of our marriage. However, even after 3 years of marriage, we were unable to conceive. After undergoing infertility tests together, it was discovered that the problem lay with me, and I am currently undergoing treatment. Don't worry about it at all. I'm just happy you're here to talk to me. There's still a chance the treatment could succeed. Let's believe in it. Sandra often gives advice and supports me whenever she visits. Her words have always been a great help to me. But one day, I saw Sandra carrying a large bag on her way home from shopping. As I was about to call out to her, Ethan appeared in front of her. What's going on? Confused, I just watched them leave. From that day on, Sandra and Ethan suddenly disappeared from my life. Years passed, and I turned 41. While enjoying a day at the aquarium, I unexpectedly ran into Sandra, who had run off with my husband 6 years ago. Sandra. Hearing my voice, Sandra turned around with a baby in her arms, and Ethan was standing beside her. After a moment of shocked silence, they casually spoke to me as if nothing had happened. Wait, is that you, Cindy? Cindy, have you been well? Have I been well? Where have you been all this time? What have you been doing? Why didn't you contact me at all? As I questioned them angrily, Sandra approached and said, You know already, don't you? Our baby was born. This is your niece. It was clear as I had suspected. Sandra and Ethan had indeed had an affair behind my back and eloped that day. The baby in Sandra's arms has a cute face, having inherited the genes of my beautiful sister and handsome ex-husband. The baby sleeps peacefully, completely innocent. Yet, just looking at the baby's face fills me with anger. You do realize what you've done, right? I glared at Sandra and Ethan as I spoke, and Ethan unrepentantly replied, Forget the past. At first, I couldn't believe that my husband and sister were having an affair. But when they didn't answer my calls and their phones were eventually disconnected, I had to accept that I had been betrayed. The pain, suffering, and sadness until I could accept the truth were immense. I guess you're still not married, am I right? Sandra has always wanted to be superior since we were children. She continued to taunt me without reservation. So, I boldly responded. Let me introduce you, my husband, a lawyer. And your nephew who's now in elementary school. I was supposed to be infertile, weren't I? Sandra and Ethan were confused. The truth is, after they eloped, my infertility treatments were successful. And I had given birth to Ethan's child. It seems the treatment was successful. I found out I was pregnant after you disappeared. I'm currently pregnant with my second child. Wha? Then that child is mine. Huh? No way. Sandra and Ethan looked incredulous. I couldn't believe it either, but it's true. It was right after you left, so the child is now 6 years old. That's really? Ah, but don't worry, the child is now my husband's, not yours. What? My son and I have legally adopted each other. So now we are truly parent and child. There's no blood relation. But since we've been together since birth, there's no difference. I met my husband when I was at a loss after being betrayed by Sandra and Ethan. I frequented a cafe that I liked, and my husband, who was also a regular there, started talking to me. When he found out he was a lawyer, I consulted him about my situation. Initially, I intended to claim damages at that time. But I prioritized the child after discovering the pregnancy. Our relationship naturally developed into dating and led to where we are today. I will be the child's father. That was what my husband proposed to me. I'm glad I trusted him when he said blood relation didn't matter. Wow, so you managed to have a child when you had no other choice. Because of your infertility. Anyway, it's true that you're infertile, Cindy. This time was just a fluke, and you might not be able to have children in the future. So take good care of them. It's good that someone is willing to take you, even you. Your husband really has unusual tastes. Sandra seemed unable to accept that the son was Ethan's child. And she disliked seeing my growing belly. My child is cuter than Cindy's, right? This child was born out of love between Ethan and me. That's why they look happier than Cindy's child. Plus, I'm not infertile, so I don't have to worry about whether I can have children. And we're discussing when to have the next one. Maybe your child in your belly was also a fluke. Sandra's pride was as high as ever, continuously hurling what could be considered insults at me. She has always been like this since we were children. Thinking she's superior because she's the eldest. If I ever outperformed her, she would taunt and belittle me. It hasn't changed even as adults. She has to be the best even though she's beautiful and smart but shallow. Sandra is still the same. I don't care about your taunts, just tell me what happened that day 6 years ago. What? What kind of way is that to talk? Why bring this up now? Now? I'm still not satisfied. You two disappeared without a trace and without reason. How would you feel if the roles were reversed? It's impossible to be satisfied without knowing the truth. Sandra began to explain. All right, I'll tell you. But you'll definitely regret hearing it. Ethan left you for me because you were infertile and couldn't have children. He said he wouldn't have married you if he had known about the infertility. Were you actually thinking those awful things? Looking at Ethan, he avoided eye contact and became evasive. Is what Sandra said true? Did you cheat on me because I was infertile? Ethan answered without looking at me. It's true. You were infertile and couldn't have children, so I got fed up and cheated on you. You should have talked to me before having an affair like that. Even if I had talked about it, you wouldn't have agreed, right? What do you mean? I told you many times that I wanted to stop the infertility treatments. But you always said you didn't want to give up on having children, so we continued. But Ethan, you said you wanted children with me, didn't you? Yes, I did, but even when we tried it, nothing happened. Then there was talk of collecting samples for tests and artificial insemination. It didn't feel like normal childmaking. I didn't feel the love. Indeed, Ethan initially liked children and was enthusiastic about fertility treatments. At first, we tried to conceive by timing ovulation and improving our diet and lifestyle. But when no signs of pregnancy showed, we proceeded with tests and then discussed artificial insemination. Physical intimacy faded as it became more about collecting samples. Though I accepted this as part of our effort to have children, there seemed to have been a disconnect in our feelings at some point. Remember, Sandra, you said Ethan didn't want to give up on the treatments and believed in their success, right? The chance of success was there, and he encouraged me to believe in it. But maybe that was. As I said this, looking at Sandra, she smirked. I realized I had been manipulated. Sandra, you lied to me. You finally realized. But it's too late. It was a delicate issue, and I couldn't ask Ethan directly, so I relied on you. But actually, Ethan had been suffering from the infertility treatments for a long time. Yet, you told me he felt the same. And kept me from giving up on the treatments, didn't you? Wait, what? Is that true? Yes. That way, Ethan would grow tired of the treatments. And your insistence on continuing would frustrate him. So you knew our true feelings. And enjoyed watching our relationship slowly deteriorate and break? I wasn't enjoying it. But when I told Ethan he could have children with me, he thought it would free him from the pain and chose to go with me. Ultimately, it was Ethan's decision. That may be so, but I didn't hear about Sandra manipulating things behind the scenes. Ethan was disturbed by the truth. Essentially, our marriage broke down because Sandra lied to both of us. While it's true we couldn't directly communicate our feelings, I realized that both of us had faults. My feelings of betrayal were mixed with a sense of shame and sadness. But by any standard, what Sandra did, meddling with her sister's husband, was unacceptable and not something a normal person would do. Weren't you hesitant to go after your sister's husband? Not at all. I fell in love with him, so I thought it couldn't be helped. Someone inexperienced in love like you, Cindy, wouldn't understand, right? Things happen between men and women, and if a relationship can be destroyed by someone else, it probably wasn't solid to begin with. I love Ethan. Someone as handsome as him is wasted on Cindy. A beautiful woman like me suits him better. Sandra, so you cared about me so much that you lied to have me? Sandra said it didn't matter that Ethan was her sister's husband if she fell in love with him. Ethan, who had been shocked by Sandra's schemes, was completely persuaded by her fervent declaration of love. The fact that she would lie to have him showed that neither Sandra nor Ethan were of sound mind. See? I cheated because I was sick of your infertility. It seems you were completely manipulated by my lies. But that just shows how fragile your marriage was. I've always wanted to elope at least once in my life. The thrill of possibly being caught was so exciting. Thanks. Oh. You're not still hung up on Ethan, are you? Even if you are, I'm not giving him up. What? No way. I'm married again and have a little one, so don't group me with you. Now I finally understood the truth about that day 6 years ago. It all started with a drama sparked by lies about our infertility treatments. That cracked our marriage. While I can't forgive my sister for lying, perhaps our relationship was fragile enough to break easily if manipulated by lies. I thought it would have been better if we had been more honest with each other back then, but now we each have separate lives. So I should forget about it. That's when Ethan dropped a bombshell. Cindy's son has a blood connection with me, right? He is legitimately your child. Are you sure about that? If you doubt it, get a test or whatever. But it's a pointless conversation. Pointless? Because my husband is now his father. What would change if you confirmed the blood relation now? My husband and I are here for him, and we aren't planning to ask you for child support. This means we won't be seeing each other again after today. Actually, I always wanted a boy, not a girl. So what? That child is originally mine and Cindy's, so could you give him back? What? I don't understand what you're saying. Ethan apparently wanted a boy. He was now asking for his child back, claiming that since the child was originally his and mine, I should return him. But my son is also my child, and children are not objects to be returned. It's infuriating to see that he isn't considering my son's feelings at all. Ethan, did you want a boy? So this child is unnecessary to you? Sandra asked somewhat angrily. No, it's not like that. I just thought it would be nice to have a boy in the future since that child is my own. Didn't Sandra recently say childbirth was so painful? She didn't want to go through it again? So I thought, why go through that pain again when I already have a son here? Indeed, that might be a good idea. It's annoying that Cindy's blood is connected. But since he's my sister's child, our blood is connected too. Then we'd have a boy and a girl that would complete the family I've envisioned. Sandra agreed with Ethan's absurd idea. My husband and I hadn't said a word, but they were getting carried away as if it was a done deal. Seeing this, my son made a disgusted face at Sandra and Ethan, clutching my skirt and hiding behind me. Then my husband, who had been silent, spoke up. Sorry to interrupt your excitement, but my son is my child, and taking him would be kidnapping. No matter how much blood is connected, I have no intention of entrusting my son to people like you. What? The real father is me, right? You're just a stranger with no blood connection, so keep quiet. No matter how much my husband explained, Ethan wouldn't understand and continued to argue ignorantly. As I've mentioned before, my son and I have adopted each other. So what? That doesn't change the fact that there's no blood connection. Indeed, adopting a child doesn't change whether or not there is a blood relation. However, when you and I divorced, our son was not registered in your family registry. Just because there is a blood relation, it doesn't mean there was a true parent-child relationship when my wife, unmarried at the time, gave birth and then remarried me. Therefore, to become the legal parent of the son who was in my wife's registry, I legally adopted him, and we became legally obligated parents. My son and I are not connected by blood. However, by adopting him, I have taken on the responsibility to raise him. In the family registry and by law, I am recognized as his parent. So, you are just someone who is related by blood. If you were to forcibly take our son now, it would be considered kidnapping because, legally and by registry, the parents are my wife and me. Do you have any questions about this? After my husband finished speaking, Ethan and Sandra were left speechless, unable to respond. I acknowledge the blood relation between you and our son. However, I have been the one by his side since he was born. Do you even know what expression he had when he was born? How much he weighed, or how he is grown up? There may be no blood relation between my son and me, but we have many memories of being together as a parent and child. Family bonds are built gradually over time. Ethan seemed utterly defeated, searching for words but finding none. Thinking that just being blood-related would solve everything. Suddenly, our eyes met, and he blurted out, "You say we divorced, but I never handed in a divorce form. You didn't use any illegal means, did you?" Desperate to find a fault with us, Ethan suddenly brought up the matter of the divorce form. "Ah, about that. You were the one who wrote it and stored it in the drawer, weren't you?" "What? You always threatened divorce during our arguments." Waving the pre-filled divorce form at me. "So, I just finalized it and submitted it to the office." Ethan seemed to have forgotten about that and was taken aback. "Besides, you ran off with your sister and have been living separately for so long that generally, after 2 to 5 years, the marriage is considered to have failed. Either way, we could have divorced." Ethan was frustrated again, having been argued down. Suddenly, Sandra approached our son and said, "You're old enough to understand what adults are saying, right?" "Yes. That man is your real father, and this man is the fake father," Sandra said, pointing at Ethan and then at my husband. "What are you suddenly telling the child? Normally, children live with their real fathers. It's rare for someone to live with a fake father like you. Which one do you prefer? Living with the real father or the fake one? Also, your mother and I are real sisters. I'm the older and more beautiful one, don't you think? If you lived with your real father, you could have a beautiful mother like me. Don't you think that would make you very happy?" "Stop it. Don't say weird things to such a young child and try to make him decide." Sandra had filled our son's head with adult concerns. And he looked displeased at her, just like before. Watching him remain silent, I stroked his head and said, "You don't have to say anything." But then, he suddenly spoke, "Hey, old lady." Old lady. Being called aunt surprised Sandra, but from our son's perspective, a 45-year-old Sandra would indeed seem like an aunt. Technically, she is his aunt, so it's not incorrect. I almost burst out laughing at her reaction. "I'm your aunt, not an old lady. Thinking in terms of real or fake is outdated. I heard on TV recently that there are many types of families now. There are kids who can't live with their parents for various reasons. And some are abused even though they have parents. A friend of mine from the facility comes to school. And he loves the staff there because they're kind to him. Is that so?" "That's good." Sandra was stunned by our son's mature conversation. Growing up watching my husband, our son often imitated him. They say children take after their parents, and perhaps because my husband is calm. Our son is also unusually composed for his age. So I think if that person is happy, that's good. Just because someone is the real father doesn't guarantee happiness. And being a fake father doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I know we are not blood related, but my dad is very kind. He always plays with me on his days off, helps with homework, and even gives me piggyback rides. My mom makes the best hamburgers and spaghetti in the world. She organizes my backpack, folds the laundry, and prepares my clothes, all very kindly. I love my dad's big hands and my mom's smiling face. I'm happy to be the child of my mom and dad. Our son responded to Sandra's question with a smile, then looked at my husband and me. "I love you too. I love you too." As my husband and I told him, he smiled happily. Watching our son's smile, both my husband and I felt cherished. I had been worried about how a child would feel. But children grow up influenced by their parents and their surroundings. Today's children access a lot of information through TV and smartphones. It's impressive to think that he formed his thoughts by watching something on TV. My husband stroked our son's head and addressed Sandra and Ethan. I don't appreciate the strange questions you suddenly asked our son. But do you understand what I've been saying? What's important isn't blood relation, but how you relate to someone. Just appearing and claiming to be a father, when you have no bond at all, is unimaginable. I think this will be our last meeting, but please don't say strange things to our son. Or try anything like kidnapping him in the future. Got it? I'll give up, all right. You don't need to get so heated, it was obviously a joke. But getting heated is what parents do. You're a parent too, right? Try to be more reasonable. Ethan seemed displeased watching the familial bond between my husband and son, who are not related by blood but clearly close. But 6 years had passed. Thinking about what it would have been like if my son had ended up like Ethan chills me. And I'm sincerely grateful that I met my husband. This is a separate matter. What is it? It seems you hurt my wife quite a bit 6 years ago. That was 6 years ago, why bring it up now? You had an affair with my wife's sister. While still married to my wife and eloped suddenly. The sister knew he was her sister's husband and deliberately lied to cause the marriage to fail. When I met my wife, she was pregnant and looked very tired and worn out. The trauma from what you did to her caused her insomnia. Later, she was diagnosed with depression and became unable to work. If I hadn't met her, I don't know what would have happened to her. I cannot forgive you. And I think you should take full responsibility for what happened then. Responsibility? But it's been 6 years, so it's statute barred, isn't it? Yes, you're well informed. We will be filing for damages. So please acknowledge this and make the appropriate payments to my wife. If you can't get this done, taking the infidelity into account, we'll file a lawsuit. You'll file a lawsuit? We don't have the money for a lawsuit. Shall we get a lawyer and discuss this? I don't have money to pay for a lawyer. Then simply acknowledge the damages and pay them. I won't allow you to continue to hurt my wife any further. As I mentioned before, I am a lawyer, and no matter where you hide, I will find you, so you can't escape. My husband, who had been calm until now, was smiling, but his eyes were not laughing. What will you do? I am fine with taking this to court. Ethan and Sandra turned pale and forced a smile, clearly frightened by the prospect of what might happen if they refused. My husband was staring them down. Okay, we will pay the damages. Sandra, acknowledge it and apologize. Fine, we'll pay. Is that so? Upon hearing this, my husband smiled and said, I will send the paperwork later, but first, please apologize to my wife. He demanded that they apologize to me. Although they seemed reluctant, the icy look from my husband overwhelmed them. And they sincerely turned to me and apologized while bowing deeply. I am truly sorry for what happened at that time. I am really sorry. The things you two did are something I can never forgive. No matter how many times you apologize or pay damages, I won't forget. You said you have become parents, right? From now on, try to be decent people and make that child happy. And do not speak of my son to that child. I do not want any involvement with you two ever again, nor do I want our children involved. Stay away from us from now on. Remember what happens if you break your promise to my wife. With that, we left the scene. Onlookers watched as Sandra and Ethan remained bowed in apology. And while I felt a sense of retribution seeing their embarrassment, we walked away. Later, as a result of being sued for damages, Sandra and Ethan had to sell their apartment and moved into a rented house. Ethan lost his position and had his salary reduced at the company, where my husband had previously reported the incident, forcing him to take on multiple jobs. Later, it was decided that my husband would start his own business, and we would move abroad. My husband speaks French, and our son has been fluently speaking French since he was a baby due to early education programs. While the new lifestyle is daunting, we are looking forward to living abroad, and I plan to learn French from them to become fluent myself. Since then, thanks to my husband, I have been able to sleep well without stress or trauma, living each day in peace.
The voice on her phone caused stress to rise across the office. Do you not value your long-term clients? Like a razor, the voice sliced through the quiet. She hung up and turned to face me in silence for a bit before letting out a long sigh and giving me a worried expression. Mason, what do we do at times like this? There was a tone of complete helplessness in her voice. I became increasingly aware that I needed to help her more aggressively. Mason is my name, and I am 39 years old. I work on an 8-companies maintenance team, where my major responsibility is to manage business systems that were created internally. Fixing system bugs, enhancing performance, and responding to sporadic user requests for new features are all part of the job description. Each team member supports the others while devoting themselves to particular tasks. Answering questions and performing daily system checks are my main responsibilities. I frequently deal with database problems and data update errors, identifying each issue and resolving it. I examine error data and verify system functionality. Although we rarely receive recognition for our work, we make sure everything goes without a hitch by working in the background. This is our maintenance team's pride and the real worth of our labor. It seems like the greatest pleasure when a client says, "We chose this system because the support is so reliable." Seldom. I never gave any thought to my reputation on the team. I was not a loud or conspicuous person. I merged into the background, if anything. However, one day while I was going about my regular business, something started to change a little. Meeting a new person served as the impetus for this transformation. Because of her, I began to alter even though I never felt the need to stand out. It took place on the day that the maintenance team leader's transfer was made public. Emma was the one who came to take his place. Emma was 34, according to her former coworkers. She was chosen as the new maintenance team leader because of her great willingness to contribute to the long-term stability and efficiency of systems, and because she had previously excelled in the development department. On her first day, Emma immediately changed the vibe of the team with her upbeat disposition and fair, friendly manner. Her cheerful personality appeared to shine through her desk. She had the self-assurance of a leader, was well-groomed in a sharp suit, and had distinctive features. She exuded an accessible charm with her soft expression. Every time she talked, her voice had a pleasing way of echoing in my ears, and her seat was near mine. I was anxious about Emma's words when she first approached my desk, but she was only introducing herself. "Hi, Mason. The former leader told me you're dependable and experienced. I'm excited to work with you, even if I may need to rely on you occasionally." Her comments calmed me down. If there's anything I can do, I'm happy to help. I look forward to working with you too. I exhaled a sigh of relief after answering her upbeat greeting and hopeful glance. A simple smile relieved the anxiety I had been experiencing, so of course I grinned back. Her upbeat demeanor inspired me to approach my task with a fresh perspective. During daily operations, Emma treated everyone equally. When someone had new ideas or suggestions, she would actively encourage team discussions. She even took an interest in the work I quietly tackled. "Mason, how's the progress on the issue? She'd often ask casually. They want me to respond today, but it's a bit tricky and might take time. However, we've seen similar issues before, so I'm checking old records for a solution. She always encouraged me. That sounds tough, but I'm sure you'll figure it out, Mason. Oh, and if you ever hit a wall, don't hesitate to let me know. I can check with the development team for you. Her consideration and kindness gradually started changing me. The previous leader was by no means a bad leader. He was systematic and thoroughly maintained organized management. Under his leadership, work always proceeded according to plan, and there were very few mishaps within the maintenance team. He had extensive technical knowledge and earned the respect of everyone on the team. However, his leadership came with a certain strictness, and at times, the team's atmosphere was tense and a little strained. In contrast, Emma's leadership style was flexible and open. She valued each member's opinion and made an effort to create an environment where ideas could be freely expressed. Thanks to her, the team's atmosphere became more relaxed and creative. Even I began to talk more actively with other team members. The internal work life, which often felt isolating, gradually started to feel brighter. Thanks to her, her presence had colored my world in ways I hadn't imagined. Each day at the office became something I looked forward to more than before. To my surprise, I found myself enjoying our conversations so much that I started sharing my worries and concerns about work with her. Emma's warm personality and dedicated attitude toward the team slowly began to unravel the tension I carried. One day, Emma approached my desk with a slightly anxious expression. Mason, there's a bit of a problem. You know that request from the client you handled recently. I went to consult the development team because it's tough for our team to address, she said. Her voice unusually carried a hint of agitation. She was referring to a request I'd received from a client about modifying the report generation feature of their business system. But this wasn't an ordinary issue. The problematic feature had been developed using Procobol, a programming language now considered ancient. No one on our team knew how to handle it, and even the development team had no experience with it. The last person who worked with the language had left the company 4 years ago. Looking at me apologetically, Emma explained our team doesn't have the skills to handle this, and the development team can't step in either. I plan to give the client some kind of answer, but I can't think of a good one right now. Her expression showed just how troubled she was. Seeing her like that, I also wanted to do something, but there seemed to be no way out. Emma had no choice but to inform the client that the issue couldn't be fixed. As I watched her make the call, I could practically hear the client's anger spilling over to our side. The frustration practically echoed throughout the office. Don't you care about your longtime clients? The voice on the other end cut through the tense silence. She tried her best to respond sincerely, but the voice on the other end only grew angrier. When she finally hung up, she turned to me, silent for a moment. Then, with a deep sigh and a worried look, she said softly, Mason, what are we supposed to do in situations like this? There was a hint of despair in her voice. The anxiety in her eyes weighed heavily on my heart as well. That incident made us painfully aware that we still had so much to learn. Technology advances day by day, but sometimes even old technologies need to be revived. That day, we didn't just feel our limitations as engineers, but we were forced to think seriously about how we could grow as a team. Looking into her eyes, I said firmly, it might be tough, but let's try to find a solution together. At the very least, we should talk to Alex. We don't usually consult him about maintenance issues, but special situations require special measures. Emma looked a bit surprised at my suggestion, but nodded in agreement. You're right. I'll contact Alex. Her expression seemed to brighten slightly, as if she'd found a glimmer of hope. She headed off to Alex, the department manager, to explain the problem and its impact, asking for his support. However, when Emma returned from Alex's office, her usual brightness was gone, and the disappointment on her face hinted at an unfavorable outcome. She slowly made her way back to her desk, looked me in the eye, and let out a deep sigh. Then, she quietly began to tell me about her conversation with Alex. Mason, I told Alex everything about the issue, but he was pretty firm about it. He said, "Emma, this is a critical matter. They're one of our key clients, and many users have been relying on our business system for years. We can't leave this problem unresolved, so find a solution however you can." He emphasized it with a serious look. Her voice trembled slightly under the weight of the pressure. Hearing this, I searched for words to comfort her. It was hard to see her so dejected. At the same time, I felt a confusing surge of emotions toward her. Why does seeing her so down make me feel this way? Why do I feel so compelled to support her? Could it be that I like her? The question swirled endlessly in my mind. This was the first time I had ever felt such emotions, I thought. Emma, please don't carry this burden alone. We're here too, and we'll solve this problem together. If there's anything we can do, just say the word. The whole team will support you. The other maintenance team members nearby chimed in as well. Emma, we'll help however we can, they said with conviction. She managed a small smile, looking as though she had regained a bit of strength. From that moment, Emma wasted no time. She knocked on the development team's doors repeatedly. The development team had several leaders, but each one gave her the same response when she asked for help. Nobody uses such an old language anymore. I'm too busy right now, sorry. It's impossible. Consistently, they turned her down. With each rejection, I could see Emma's expression grow heavier. Watching her efforts firsthand, I knew just how hard she was trying to resolve this issue. She wasn't the type to give up easily. Still, repeated closed doors can break anyone's spirit. Seeing her like that, I knew I had to do something more to support her. I, too, had faced plenty of rejection in the past. Her frustration reminded me of my own struggles years ago, and it hurt to see her in that state. I wanted to help her somehow. As I searched for answers, I recalled my past. During the recession caused by the Lehman shock, I became a job seeker, facing challenges to survive that tough time. I taught myself multiple programming languages. Among those were the basics of SQL and COBOL, which turned out to be related to this issue. While I had never worked with ProCOBOL directly, I thought that maybe this knowledge could help Emma, the team, and the client. I immediately started digging through ProCOBOL manuals and online resources. After work hours, I stayed late into the night studying ProCOBOL syntax and characteristics. I spent my weekends almost entirely at the office, exploring ways to combine SQL and COBOL to fix the problem. Even as Emma and the others left for the day, I remained battling the screen alone. During this time, Emma reached out to branch engineers and external vendors, but budget constraints meant all her attempts were turned down. Even as she ran around searching for solutions, she still found moments to check in on me. Mason, you've been staying late these past few days. Are you handling a bug fix? I turned away from the screen and looked at her. Not exactly. I've been researching that ProCOBOL issue, trying to see if there's anything we can do. She looked surprised. What? Mason, didn't you say you didn't have experience with ProCOBOL? I smiled slightly and explained to clear up her misunderstanding. No, I don't, but it's built on a combination of SQL and COBOL. I still use SQL, and I studied COBOL a long time ago. I'm just trying to piece it together. Hearing this, the other maintenance members also stepped up to offer their help. Mason, don't keep this to yourself. I can help with the SQL part. I'll assist with testing, another one added. Emma's eyes glistened as she expressed her gratitude to all of us. Thank you so much, everyone. I've been struggling alone, but I can't believe how much support you're giving me. Mason, you and the whole team have given me hope. At that moment, I felt a powerful sense of unity as our team came together to tackle this challenge. That unity became our greatest strength. I took the lead in assigning tasks to the team. Despite our usual workloads, we divided the roles strategically, using whatever limited time we had. We paused when needed, repeating corrections and checks as we pushed forward. Each of us played to our strengths, working together with all our might to solve the issue. Even in the midst of our business, collaborating as a team gave us a sense of steady progress. With every obstacle, our bond grew stronger, and our mutual support solidified. It was a great opportunity for me to grow in the process of working together as a team toward a common goal. While each person did his or her job well, those days continued for 2 weeks. After countless rounds of trial and error, we finally discovered a solution to fix the program. We ran numerous simulations and conducted thorough tests, down to the smallest detail. Then, the relief we felt when we confirmed the repaired system worked correctly was beyond words. After completing the fix, we immediately reported it to Emma. "Emma, we did it. We fixed the report functionality just as the client requested, all on our own." When she heard the news, her face instantly lit up. After reviewing the fix, she turned to me with a look of genuine gratitude. "Thank you so much, Mason. Because of you and everyone here, I think the client will be thrilled," she said, her smile beaming with happiness. Seeing her radiant smile, I felt both relief and an indescribable sense of accomplishment. When we reported the fix to the client, they were extremely satisfied. Hearing their response, Emma and I exchanged small victory high fives in the office. It felt like all the struggles we had faced had suddenly lifted, leaving us with a sense of triumph. This experience not only made me realize the growth I had achieved, both personally and as part of the team, but it also strengthened the bond between Emma and me. One afternoon, I was suddenly summoned by Alex. When I entered the room, Alex was sitting at his desk, looking deep in thought. As I walked in, he lifted his head and looked at me. "Mason, the report fixed the other day was a huge help. Thank you. With that in mind, I want to assign you as the leader of our next big project." At first, I couldn't process what Alex was saying. I was so surprised that I couldn't speak for a moment. But when I saw the serious look in his eyes, I realized this was no light conversation. "Wait, a new project, and you want me as the leader? Are you sure I'm the right person for this?" Alex smiled apologetically and began explaining. "Ah, my bad. I should have explained the project first. The next big project involves transitioning the old Procobol system to a more modern program and language that today's developers can work with. You've shown that you can handle Procobol, and you're familiar with modern programming languages as well. By switching to a new system, we'll be able to resolve future issues or requests more efficiently. Emma told me that the report fix was only possible because of you. I'm confident that you're the right person to lead this project to success." Hearing his words, I was speechless for a moment. I never expected to be entrusted with such an important role. "Thank you, but I'm not sure if I'm confident enough for it. Can I have a little time to think?" I replied hesitantly. Alex seemed slightly surprised, but quickly softened his expression. "I understand. Just consider it carefully." I nodded lightly and left his office. Walking down the hallway, my heart felt conflicted. In my experience, my hard work hadn't always paid off. During the time, I became a job seeker, facing challenges after the Lehman shock. No matter how hard I worked, my efforts were rarely recognized. Those memories came flooding back, as vivid as ever. Not long after, Emma came over to my desk, eager to talk about what she'd heard from Alex. She seemed genuinely happy about the idea of me becoming the new project leader. "Mason, this is such a great opportunity. You're leading a project. That's going to be amazing, and we'll all be here to support you." Her words were always full of positivity, but I felt I needed to be honest with her. "Emma, to be honest, I'm not sure about this. I'm thinking of turning it down." Her eyes widened in shock before she quickly responded with conviction. "What? You absolutely have to take this. What's holding you back?" I took a deep breath and opened up about my feelings. There are two things that worry me. First, from my past experience, my hard work hasn't always paid off. During the Lehman shock, when I started job hunting, most companies froze hiring. As a liberal arts graduate, I had no standout skills, and for 6 months, I didn't get a single offer. I tried to change my situation, so I threw myself into learning programming languages on the advice of a friend. I ended up teaching myself over 10 languages, but even then, every interview ended the same way. You don't have real work experience. It took over a year before I finally landed a job, and that was only because of a connection. That's when I realized that sometimes effort isn't enough. So now I'm scared that even if I try hard, it might all be for nothing. Emma patiently listened to me, and when I finished, she spoke softly but firmly. But Mason, this time is different. I saw how alive you were when you tackled that issue, how much you shined. Watching you inspired me too. Her words struck a chord within me. I realized that little by little, my recent work had been helping me heal from those past scars. Back when I first started learning programming, I held on to the hope that it might open doors for me, and I also genuinely enjoyed it. That's why I kept learning language after language. Even when Alex brought up the Report Fix project, a part of me imagined how smoothly it could be done with the right programming tools. Emma's optimism and gentle smile planted a new seed of hope within me. There was no point in being tied down by my bitter past. It was time to move forward again, to have the courage to take another step. Then Emma asked, with a soft smile, "Can I hear the second reason?" Feeling a little embarrassed, I muttered quietly, "Well, I just thought it'd be nice to keep working with you." Hearing that, she looked a little surprised, but her expression quickly softened into a bright smile. "That's even more reason for you to take on the role, Mason. I know you'll turn this project into something incredible. I'm looking forward to seeing you lead the team and support us as the amazing leader I know you can be," she said, encouraging me. Her words gave me the push I needed to solidify my resolve. I decided to take the challenge, to work alongside her, supporting one another and growing together. With that vision in mind, I committed to moving forward. For the next 6 months, I threw myself into the report generation feature modification project. When I first accepted the role of project leader, I felt like a heavy weight had been placed on my shoulders. But thanks to Emma and the support of my team members, my initial anxiety gradually transformed into confidence. We decided to migrate the report generation program from Procobol to Python. After careful comparison, Python was chosen based on the development team's familiarity and ease of future maintenance. Every day was spent working late into the night, and weekends were often spent cooped up in the office. But every step we took brought us closer to success. We meticulously combed through the existing code line by line, rebuilding it in the new programming language. My proficiency in multiple programming languages turned out to be a tremendous asset in this project. As the project progressed, collaboration with the development team grew stronger and more seamless. The development team members began to highly value my programming knowledge, and I also received a lot of advice and support from them. The development team's leader, Matthew, approached me one day and said, "Mason, your work on this project has been a huge help. Not just the technical solutions, but also the thoughtful documentation and design for long-term maintenance. I've learned so much from you." Hearing those words, I felt like all the long hours of effort had finally paid off. The programming languages I had struggled to learn during my jobless days were now proving to be invaluable. I realized that all the hardships back then had not been in vain. This experience became a powerful testament to overcoming that difficult time, filling me with confidence for my future career. Seeing my skills recognized and witnessing them create tangible value made me truly believe that the path I had chosen was the right one. After 6 months of hard work, the project was finally complete. The new report generation system began running smoothly. When we informed the client that future modifications would now be much easier, they gave us high praise. Following this success, Alex officially entrusted me with a leadership position on the development team. Mason, under your leadership, this team has achieved great results. I'm counting on you to take us even further, he said. Hearing those words filled me with both pride and a sense of responsibility. Through this project, I had overcome the fears and doubts that had been holding me back. It was thanks to Emma, my team, and the development team's support that I had been able to achieve this. As a leader now, I wanted to take on even more projects, guiding the team to greater success. Seeing the entire team grow and improve together became my greatest joy. After the project's successful completion, I made a decision. I decided to invite Emma out to dinner to express my gratitude and to share something deeply important. I was finally ready to tell her how I felt about her. On a slightly chilly autumn evening, I invited Emma to a cozy local Italian restaurant. When she arrived, she wasn't in her usual suit, but dressed in a casual outfit. Seeing her like that was refreshing, and I found myself growing nervous. "Thank you for bringing me to such a lovely place, Mason," she said with a smile, which gradually eased my tension. As the evening went on, we talked about the project, our future work, and even personal hobbies. Her laughter and attentive listening made me appreciate her even more, revealing just how deep and kind-hearted she was. When dessert was almost over, my heart began to race. I took a deep breath and decided to speak my mind. "Emma, there's another reason I asked you to dinner tonight. Working on this project, I've gotten to know you so much better, and I'm truly grateful for that. And I've also realized that I've grown to care about you. I like you." It was difficult to get the words out, but I looked straight into her eyes as I spoke. She looked surprised at first, but then her face softened into a warm smile. "Mason, I feel the same way. I've always relied on you as a team member, but ever since the report fix, I've watched you grow and shine right by your side. I want to spend more time with you too." Hearing her words, my heart overflowed with relief and joy. That moment became one of the happiest in my life. From that day on, we started dating. With each moment we spent together, our bond deepened. Her smile had the power to lift my spirits, no matter how tired or stressed I was. With her support, I found the strength to face the daily pressures of work. Years later, we got married and built a small but happy family together. Having a partner who supported me both at work and in life brought new colors and meaning to my world. Meeting Emma and sharing every day with her is the greatest joy in my life. Back then, when I became a job seeker facing challenges due to the effects of the Lehman shock, I faced countless hardships. But the effort I put into learning programming languages ultimately led me to this happy future. That difficult period shaped who I am today and perhaps prepared me to meet Emma. Looking back now, I realize that those struggles became the foundation that brought us together so strongly. Meeting and the journey we've shared, growing side by side, is an irreplaceable treasure to me. I believe that together we can continue to support each other and overcome any challenges life throws our way.
I'm Brenda, a 30-year-old single person who finds it difficult to find love. I needed a night out after splitting up with my unfaithful ex, and Lisa's party looked like the ideal getaway. Away from drama, my existence is fairly straightforward. I own a small, elegant boutique in the city where I sell designer clothing to customers who don't bother to check price tags. As I entered Lisa's crowded apartment, the noise of the crowd and the music were so loud that I could not hear my own thoughts. Lisa excitedly grabbed my arm as I was surveying a peaceful area and grabbing a drink. "Brenda, you succeeded. Look, I want you to get to know this person. Finance stuff and all that, he's right up your alley," she exclaimed over the music as she pulled me through the crowd of revelers. Before I realized it, I was grinning cheekily in front of a tall guy. He gave off the impression of someone who was confident in his wealth and wouldn't hesitate to share it with you. This is Nathan, Brenda. Lisa gave us a wink and said, Nathan, meet Brenda. She owns the choicest clothing store downtown. Before I could object, Lisa departed. Nathan gave me a hard handshake and a questioning look. A clothes store? Really? Such sounds like a great time. I work in finance myself, doing corporate investments and all that kind of stuff. He continued in a smooth, assured voice. Indeed, is fantastic. I get to meet a lot of interesting folks, I said, trying not to roll my eyes as I took a sip of my drink. Talking business was the last thing I wanted to do. So why haven't I seen you around earlier? A stunning woman like you, I wouldn't forget, he said, drawing nearer than necessary. I stepped back and arched an eyebrow, likely due to the fact that I spend more time examining fabric samples than attending financial galas. What is your narrative? Big deals and all the numbers. He let out a real, hearty laugh. Quite a bit. I'm off work tonight, so it's not as glamorous as it seems. What do you think is the worst thing about having your own company? Inventory days and holiday returns, I said, finding myself becoming more receptive to the conversation. And you? What catches you off guard in the finance industry? Rules and the never-ending paperwork. Anyway, enough about work. What are your hobbies? With a deceptive smile, Nathan inquired. I was talking to a finance guy at a loud party about things I hadn't planned to talk about, like my love of vintage jazz recordings and thrift store excursions. Nathan was truly involved in the conversation, asking questions and giving personal anecdotes on where to discover the best music venues in the city. He wasn't just listening. The party was coming to an end before I realized how quickly the evening had gone. Nathan turned to face me, then back to his watch. I had no idea that I would talk to someone so fascinating for the entire evening. Can I see you once more? I wavered, memories of our recent breakup racing through my head. I'm not really looking to jump into anything new, I said. No demands. To put it mildly, it will include exchanging more music and possibly even some coffee. He made a suggestion. I know of a restaurant that hosts live jazz on weekends. It was like entering a vortex of jazz concerts and spontaneous city walks when I started dating Nathan. Even though I had told him right away that I wasn't seeking to become serious about anything, our time together seemed to erode my resolve a little bit each day. We had been dating for a while. Fall was beginning to bite, and one evening Nathan called and said, Hey Brenda, put on that fancy red dress you love so much. I'm going to surprise you. As long as the surprise involves some decent food, you've got yourself a deal, I said, curious. I'm going hungry. He laughed. Trust me, you'll want to be there. We crossed paths outside my shop. He appeared as though he had just stepped out of a magazine as he leaned against his automobile. As he opened the passenger door for me, he said, Ready for that surprise? He kept the whereabouts a secret while we traveled, entertaining me with constant banter that made me feel both relaxed and a little nervous. To last, we arrived to a quaint little jazz club downtown, the kind with few tables and dim lighting. We followed the host to a private area close to the stage. But Nathan's focus was entirely on me, not the band. He leaned in and whispered, Brenda, I know you said you wanted things light, but I've got to be honest with you. Midway during a melancholic saxophone solo, oh yeah, as I took a taste of my drink, my heart began to beat faster. Honest about what? About this. He extracted a tiny velvet box from inside his jacket. When he opened it, a tasteful, understated ring caught the gentle light. Brenda, I adore you so much. I want to do more than simply hang around and go on dates. I'm craving more. With you, I want everything. "Are you going to marry me?" I remained silent for a while. His sincere and optimistic expression was all that was visible as the music gradually faded away. That's when my pragmatic side came out. "This is huge, Nathan. You are aware of my fear of plunging back into the depths." I know. He grabbed my hand in a hurry to comfort me. "But consider this. We work really well together. You chuckle at my jokes. We both can't dance to save our lives. And I act as though I understand art because you do. What more is required?" In spite of myself, I laughed. Maybe a bit more practice on the dance floor. Anything with a smile. "So what do you say?" I did want this, us, a future, everything, as I looked into his eyes. At last I responded, yes, feeling more at ease saying it than I had anticipated. "Yes, I'll marry you." After Nathan put the ring on my finger, we celebrated the only way we knew how. By staying late into the night, discussing everything and nothing, and beginning to plan our next trip together. The next day, Nathan was eager to introduce me to his mother, Mrs. Harper. We met for brunch at a quaint little cafe she loved. Right off the bat, Mrs. Harper was all smiles and open arms. "Oh, Brenda, I'm so thrilled Nathan found someone like you. I just know we're going to be great friends," she said as we settled into our seats. She began chatting away, filling me in on all the little details of Nathan's life. "You know, he absolutely loves lasagna. I must give you my recipe. And if you really want to spoil him, make him his favorite chocolate pecan pie. He's just like his father, can't resist a good pie." The brunch went by in a blur of laughter and shared stories, making me feel a little more part of Nathan's world, a world I was slowly but surely starting to love. It had been quite the reveal taking Nathan to the house where I grew up. It's this big old place that looks like it came straight out of a storybook, all thanks to my dad's knack for playing the stock exchange. When we pulled up in the driveway, Nathan's eyes popped out of his head. "Wow, this place is incredible," he exclaimed, looking around like a kid in a candy store. "Yeah, Dad's done well for himself," I said, trying to play it cool, even though I was proud of where I came from. Inside, Nathan was polite, but I caught him more than once checking out the finer details of the house's decor and the art on the walls, even asking my dad about some of the antiques. It wasn't all bad, though. My parents seemed to like him, especially when Dad and Nathan started talking money and investments. My mom pulled me aside while the guys chatted. "He seems like a good man, Brenda," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Very attentive, isn't he?" "Yeah, he's great." I smiled, though part of me wondered if his interest was more in the lifestyle my family had than in me. I shook off the feeling, not wanting to judge too harshly too soon. Later, as we were leaving, Nathan couldn't stop talking about the house. "One day, I'd love a place like this. Imagine the parties I could throw, the people I'd host," he mused, already daydreaming. I nudged him lightly, bringing him back to earth. "You mean the kind of home we could build for our kids, right?" "Of course, that's what I meant," he corrected quickly with a sheepish grin. "Our kids would love it, wouldn't they?" "Definitely," I agreed, though his initial comment lingered in my mind longer than I wanted it to. Fast forward to today, our wedding day, and all those jitters and doubts seemed trivial compared to the joy of the moment. We decided on a simple ceremony at a local garden. It was intimate, just close family and friends, no big spectacle. As I walked down the aisle, seeing Nathan waiting for me, all my worries melted away. His smile was all I needed to reassure me of our future together. After we were declared husband and wife, the celebration began. It was laid back, just how we wanted it. We danced, laughed, and enjoyed the company of our loved ones. During the reception, my dad clinked his glass for a toast. "To Brenda and Nathan, May your life together be as beautiful and enduring as this day. Remember, the best things in life aren't things. They're the moments and memories you create together. As the party carried on into the evening, I felt a profound sense of contentment. Whatever uncertainties the future held, we were ready to face them together. I was ready to face them. With Nathan by my side, life after the wedding was a whirlwind. Nathan and I were settling into married life, adjusting to each other's habits and routines when we were hit with a curveball. My dad, who had always been the pillar of strength in our family, got sick, really sick. It was cancer, and it came out of nowhere, or so it seemed. We spent a lot of time at the hospital, and during one of those visits, Dad decided to have a heart-to-heart with me. Nathan was there too, fetching coffee down the hall. When he returned, he found us whispering seriously and sat down, his face etched with concern. "Brenda, there's something important I need to tell you," Dad said, his voice weaker than I remembered it ever being. He took a deep breath, grasping for every bit of strength he could muster. "I've made some decisions about the estate. You're going to inherit $3 million. The room felt silent for a moment, even with the constant beeps and murmurs of the hospital around us. I didn't know what to say. It was a lot of money, a life-changing amount. Nathan, who had just sat down with the coffees, almost choked on his drink. "Wow, that's a lot of money," he stammered, trying to keep his composure. I could see the wheels turning in his head, and something in his expression shifted. It was subtle, but it was there, a flicker of something that wasn't just surprise. It looked a lot like calculation. "Yeah, it's a big responsibility," I responded, feeling suddenly very tired. "It's not just about the money. It's about keeping Dad's legacy alive, making sure we manage everything responsibly." Dad nodded, looking relieved that I understood the weight of his decision. "I trust you, Brenda. You know what's important." Nathan quickly added, "Of course, we'll take care of everything, sir. It's what's best for our future, right, Brenda?" I noticed the weight in his statement and felt a twinge of discomfort. This was suddenly about us, not just me. "Yeah, sure," I said, but my mind was racing. This wasn't how I wanted this conversation to go. After that day, things changed. Nathan started talking more about investments, real estate, things we could do with the inheritance. One night over dinner, he brought it up again. "So I was thinking about the money," he began, not wasting any time. "We should start looking into some properties, maybe even consider some high-yield investments." I was pushing my food around my plate, not really hungry anymore. "Nathan, can we slow down a bit? This isn't just free cash to throw around. It's my dad's hard-earned money. We need to be careful, think things through." He looked a bit taken aback, but recovered quickly. "Of course, I get that. I just think it's a good opportunity to grow our assets, make sure we're set for the future." The words hung in the air, heavy and a bit too presumptuous for my taste. "Yeah, I know, but let's just handle one thing at a time, okay? My dad's still here, and that's what matters now." Nathan nodded, but the eager glint in his eye didn't match his agreeable tone. "Sure, Brenda, whatever you think is best." The weeks following Dad's passing were some of the hardest I'd ever lived through. The world seemed to move on, but I was stuck, my grief a constant shadow. Nathan and his mom, Mrs. Harper, were around a lot, supposedly to help out. One night, their true colors showed through in a way that rocked me to my core. It was late, and I couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts, too much sadness. Mrs. Harper had been all sweet and comforting, hovering around me with hot teas and sympathetic smiles. "Brenda, dear, you look exhausted. Why don't you take one of these sleeping pills? It'll help you rest," she suggested, holding out a small pill. "Okay, I'll do that. I muttered, not keen on the idea. I didn't want to miss a moment. I didn't want to blur the edges of my memories of Dad with drug-induced sleep. She shrugged, placing the pill on the kitchen counter. "I'll be in the living room if you need anything." I nodded, pretending to head to my room, but something felt off. Curiosity, or maybe intuition, nudged me to stay awake, to listen. I crept back towards the living room, the floor cold under my feet, my heart pounding in the silence. Their voices were hushed but heated. I paused at the edge of the room, hidden by the darkness. "Are you sure she took sleeping pills? She's been so stubborn lately." Nathan's voice was frustrated and sharp. Mrs. Harper's reply was smooth like honey. "Give it time. She's vulnerable, grieving. Now's our chance to get things moving. That money should be in your account, not just sitting there. Yeah, and soon. I'm tired of playing the supportive husband. Once we get the cash, I can finally move on, maybe find someone younger, more fun." The air in my lungs froze. My heart skipped beats. This was not the man I married. This was a stranger speaking so coldly, so calculatingly. His mother chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Just make sure I get my share. A new house, perhaps. That cute little convertible we saw the other day." "Of course, Mom, you'll get whatever you want. Brenda's too dumb to figure it out before we clean her out." I felt sick, my hands trembling. How could I have been so blind? The love, the marriage, it was all a setup. Quiet as a shadow, I backed away, needing space to think, to breathe. I went to my room, locked the door, and sat on the bed, my mind racing. They were plotting against me, planning to strip me of everything. Morning came, and I acted as though nothing had happened. At breakfast, Nathan and his mother exchanged glances, their smiles too sharp, too knowing. Nathan brought up the inheritance again. "Brenda, we really should start thinking about that investment. It's what your dad would have wanted for us to secure our future." His words made my stomach turn, but I kept my face neutral, my voice calm. "I'll think about it, Nathan. Let's see what the lawyers say about the best way to handle everything." The days following my father's funeral were some of the hardest I'd ever had to pretend through. I played the part of the devastated daughter to a T, all while watching Nathan and his mother make plans for a future funded by my inheritance. His mother wasn't even trying to hide it anymore, openly browsing for new houses and cars on her laptop in the living room, as if the money was already hers. Meanwhile, Nathan was barely home. He stayed late at work, came home later than usual, and even when he was around, he was glued to his phone. One evening, as he was taking a shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand next to our bed. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen and saw a message pop up from some woman. It wasn't just friendly, it was flirty. I felt a weird mix of anger and relief. Anger because of the betrayal, but relief because it just proved what I already knew. A cheater in one part of life is a cheater in all parts. That weekend, I told Nathan I needed to clear my head and visit my mom. He barely looked up from his phone, just nodded and mumbled something about taking all the time I needed. Driving to my mom's place felt like escaping a prison. As soon as I saw her, the weight of everything started to lift. I told her everything. The overheard conversation, Nathan's late nights, the messages. I laid it all out. Mom was curious at first. "That rotten scoundrel," she exploded, pacing the kitchen. Playing happy families while plotting behind her back. But then her anger turned to laughter, a deep rolling laugh that filled the kitchen. "Oh, Brenda, they think they're so clever, but they've got another thing coming. Just wait until the wills read. They won't know what hit them." Her confidence was infectious. For the first time since that awful night, I felt like maybe things would turn out all right. So we just wait. That's it. That's it, she confirmed. Let them make their plans. They're building castles in the air, and we're about to bring them right down to the ground. Back at home, Nathan was exactly where I left him, phone in hand, probably texting that woman. But I didn't care anymore. I had something they didn't, a plan and the truth on my side. I went to bed that night, not with a heart heavy with dread, but with a spark of strategy and the anticipation of justice soon to be served. The day to read my dad's will finally arrived, and you could cut the tension in the lawyer's office with a knife. Nathan and his mom were practically buzzing with excitement, thinking they were about to become filthy rich. I sat there, feeling like I was about to watch a show, knowing full well what the finale would be, thanks to my mom's hint. We all gathered in the small, stuffy office, the air thick with anticipation. Nathan kept glancing at his watch, and his mom was tapping her foot nonstop. You'd think they were waiting for a lottery draw the way they were carrying on. The lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, cleared his throat and opened the thick folder in front of him. Thank you all for coming today. As per Mr. Thompson's wishes, I will now read the last will and testament. Nathan leaned forward, practically on the edge of his seat. His mom whispered, "Here we go," under her breath, rubbing her hands together like she was about to receive her birthday present. Mr. Jenkins began with the usual legal jargon, but soon got to the part everyone was waiting for. To my daughter Brenda, I leave the sum of $3 million. Nathan's mom let out a little squeal, and Nathan shot me a look that was meant to be comforting, but came off as smug. I just stared straight ahead, impassive. Mr. Jenkins continued, however, it must also be noted that along with this inheritance, there are debts incurred by Mr. Thompson amounting to $4 million. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Nathan's face went from smug to shocked to pale in a matter of seconds. His mom was furious. This must be some mistake. We need to see the documents, the proof. Mr. Jenkins, ever the professional, started handing out copies of the financial statements and debt notices. Everything is documented here. If you have any questions, you can consult with your own legal advisor. As the reality of the situation sunk in, my mom stood up. Her voice was calm but carried across the room. Nathan, you need to understand. My husband had a weakness for gambling. He made debts, borrowed from people, from banks. I hope you'll be noble in this situation and help Brenda with these debts. It appeared as though Nathan and his mother had been struck. Their dismay soon gave way to indignation. Assist with debt payment? Do you really think this way? We are not reimbursed for any expenses we did not incur. Nathan's mother yelled, losing all pretense of decorum. Nathan disengaged just as quickly. Ellie, I want a divorce. In the divorce decree, we'll say that none of us is claiming any assets or money from the other. That concludes it. I felt a mixture of comfort and revulsion as I stared at him. All right, Nathan, I agree if that's what you want. We can prepare the divorce decree. My mother gave me a comforting grip and a reassuring gaze as they walked out of the office, dejected and furious. It will all work out, Brenda. It's best for us if they go. Following the execution of the divorce decree, Nathan and his mother were forced to reveal their actual selves one final time. They were snickering behind me as we were leaving the attorney's office. Nathan's mother grinned. Well, at least she will have $1 million in the hole, drowning in her father's debts now. Nathan chuckled and turned to face me. Well, Brenda, good luck handling that mess. I was laughing so hard I thought they were confused. Nathan scowled. What is the reason for your laughter? My mother intervened at that point, cool as always. Up until then, she had been silent and had only observed. Because you're completely wrong, Nathan. As you can see, I have always been in charge of handling our money. Bless his soul, your father-in-law wasn't the financial whiz that everyone believed him to be. Their arrogant looks wavered. What are you discussing? Nathan's mother lost it. With a hint of hardness in her eyes, my mother grinned. All of the profitable stock deals and investments were made by me. I am estimated to be worth $50 million. Brenda's inherited obligations are easily paid off by me. Nathan had a pale face. Are you serious? Are you for real? Yeah, Mom went on, and since I'm feeling generous, I've also decided to give Brenda a lovely home that she won't have to share with anyone, particularly not a gold digger. Their looks of disbelief were priceless. With his previous haughtiness gone, Nathan truly fell to his knees and stumbled, saying, "Brenda, please, I didn't mean any of it. I was simply confused." I ignored him and his mother, who was still attempting to come to terms with the realization. I blocked their numbers from my phone as we were leaving. I didn't want to hear from them again after that. A few weeks later, word got around that Nathan was having problems. The BFFs were following him since his debts had finally caught up with him. He made an effort to connect, pleading for assistance through texts sent to pals in common. I remained steadfast. I told a friend to tell him I wish him the best of luck after he relayed his requests. That was the extent of my assistance to him.